For the last couple meetings, I brought up the fact of Clubhouse Resiliency Committee. We started about over a year ago, just to explore, what the opportunities were to ensure that our community still has this clubhouse if we have some type of another catastrophic event like Sandy. I know that many people after Sandy weren't able to use their homes for several years, whether it was because they were assembling financing or whether it was because you couldn't find a contractor or an architect or multiple reasons because there were so many people in that same boat. So due to those things, we as the board discussed the fact that we want to be proactive. We wanted to make sure that the community had this facility into the future. We wanted to make sure that there weren't several summers would go by where we wouldn't have this facility to use for our membership. And so we took a proactive approach and put together this committee to explore not only what the new clubhouse could look like, but also the financing of how we would do that. So today, I've brought together the architect and his team, Ron Berlin, and also I have Mike LaParry in the back, who's going to talk to us a little bit after Ron finishes up about what the possibilities of financing the structure and how that would look for our community members. So I'm going to hand it off to Ron and his team. Ron Berlin is the lead architect on this. And I'm going to let Ron and his team do a little bit of a bio. Oh, I'm going to do a bio for Ron. Ron Berlin.
Maybe I should do it.
Yeah, maybe you should.
Thanks a lot.
I can read, but some of the things in that code, I'm not sure that's architect code. So I should get out of the
way. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Hold the mic up. Yeah.
This okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm an introverted guy, so it isn't easy. But I'm really into what we're doing here, so I'll get over it. I'm supposed to introduce us a little bit. I have a Master of Architecture from Princeton, and I stayed in town. Basically, I stayed here in New Jersey. I've been here for a long time. I worked at Michael Graves' office back in the 80s and opened my own office in 1990.
Can you speak up?
I'm trying. Okay, sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be on the outside. I think it's cranked, Terry.
Okay.
Basically, kiss it.
How's that?
That's good.
Okay. Peter has been a friend for a really long time. He has a Bachelor of Architecture from Carnegie Mellon University and has worked at Michael Graves' office for more than 30 years. That was a Princeton firm where he was a senior associate. And my associate,
And now I work with Ron.
now he works with me. My associate Hugo has been, he received an architecture degree in Guatemala at the Universidad Rafael Landivar, had his own practice in Guatemala City, and then came to the United States where he became a citizen, and he's been working with me for 20 years in my office. So thanks so much again for inviting me here. Keep telling me to bring this back to my mouth, and I will do it. This is pretty long, but it's pretty detailed. I'll try to make it as short as I can because I really want to buy some donuts, and I'm afraid that that place will close. So it's a bit of a race. Eh? There's your community. I couldn't believe it when I was first taken here. I've never seen a place quite like this before. It's an old school kind of place, and that's become actually very rare in America now, where people live close together, they know each other, they hang out with each other, they deal with each other, and it's across generations. And I just thought it was so cool and so interesting, and it was really exciting to see this place. It's a community of homes, but it's also a community that needs a home for itself, for everyone, a home for everyone. and that's the Clubhouse. So I'm going to show you a building that celebrates your community, but I want to emphasize that this is not the building. This is a building. And by that I mean it's very specific. That is, with limited time and information that we had. I really almost have to touch it. But we're kind of past COVID now, I guess. So. But we designed a building so that you can actually picture something new and something you could see kind of vividly. And this is a building that would replace your existing clubhouse, which is increasingly prone to flooding, as you well know. Peter observed that part of it is actually below grade at this point, that far corner. So think of this, what I'm going to show you, as a starting point. It's a suggestion, but it's also very realistic in terms of technical matters. Like, we've investigated the base flood elevation here, zoning, building codes, egress requirements. Still on?
You're up.
Handicapped accessibility, and of course the structure itself. We also had a meeting with the township and the zoning official and the engineering officials, who looked at an even more preliminary version of this scheme and gave it their preliminary blessings. There was a spirit of general encouragement that encouraged us as well. They want to help us out as best they can. So we're offering you this to show you possibilities and to solicit your input. And emphasizing that this is not a fait accompli, it's a test drive, to use Peter's term. And it's meant to open a dialogue with this community. But the thing is that you can't do that without showing something that people can react to and relate to. And we felt that we needed to go really far down that road to give you something to react to. So this is something specific that starts a real conversation. And my word of advice here is, don't get bogged down in the details and the cost aspects of this right now. Just make some room for your imagination, because this is a big step, and it will impact your generation and future generations. So with that, you can go to the first slide.
Wow.
I'm going to describe the building to you a bit, tell you kind of what I had in mind here, what we have been talking about as a team. Yeah. The footprint is not very different. It's a little bit expanded from this footprint. It's basically, if you add the sheds to this area and then take a little bit more, you get the size of the main floor of this building. And it stands on these rustic pilings that you're all very familiar with, which raises your building safely up over the water that's now increasingly kind of invading this peninsula. And those pilings evoke boardwalks and ocean piers. They're sort of part of the general visual environment that you're all accustomed to living with here. And above that level, that's like the mighty support level for the building, the legs that it stands on. And above that level, there's a tough timber frame of stained wood that creates this very stable skeleton. And by having these braces that you see there, which kind of evoke lifeguard stations in a way, but which have a very important function in that they allow within that skeleton for us to create a very transparent clubhouse, because you have to be able to brace this building against the high winds that you encounter in this environment. So within that frame is this open, glassy club space, and you can then understand the three basic elements that comprise this building. So it's like, it's like your clubhouse has been like lifted up on daddy's shoulders now and can see the world around it. And it's a big view because now you can look over the parking lot and out around the bay for 270 degrees. A little bit of detail in this. The roof is a simple, inexpensive, light-colored membrane roofing with a high degree of solar reflectance, so it tends to stay cooler in the summertime. And there's potential there actually for a photovoltaic array. It's actually a really good, it's unobstructed, so there's a possibility of getting solar energy from this roof. You can see there's a broad elevated deck that faces west, which is, from what I've learned, there's like a daily celebration of the sunset. People migrate over here towards the clubhouse, and this really does that with bells on. So you'll be able to stand on that deck and look at the sunset from that high vantage. Yeah. And from that deck, there's a set of boardwalk-like bleachers that lead down back to grade. And this idea is that it would be just a great place to hang out and look at the sunset and sort of watch the daily show and really make the most of it. You'll see too that there is on the left side there are some porthole windows, which are it's just a note of whimsy. This is not a serious place. It's for summer fun. That's the primary mission of the building in a way, and they echo something of the club's history. You can show the next slide, where the old clubhouse had some similar features and had that kind of light spirit, which I think was really nice and really got lost here when the porch was enclosed for storage and office. You can go to the north elevation. That's the architectural view of the clubhouse. And there you can see those porthole windows, actually a bit darker than they ought to be portrayed. You can see the next elevation too.
Bill, could you close the blinds because there's a terrible glare on this.
Is that better?
That's
I got it.
that's the eastern elevation.
Thank you.
Shane, next slide, please. So going back to that view, but the idea there is that we really want to reflect the continuity of this community, which is a remarkable thing. We want to be able to reflect that in the clubhouse itself. And the colors are the kind of familiar grays and whites that you see in shore architecture, part of the kind of tradition of the shore. You see them also, those colors, throughout the houses in the OB2 community. And we really want this building to be part of its environment. The space below is this under the boardwalk kind of space that you're all becoming more and more familiar with because more and more houses have to be raised. And it turns out to be like this social space that people are using like an old-fashioned front porch. It's fun. And it could be the same, it could serve the same kind of purpose, but for the broader community, to have a space like that they all partake.
A casual space.
Sorry?
A casual space.
Yeah, it's a casual space underneath, open, really open. And finally, we're like opening this building up to the bay, to the breezes, and it's also a shady place because during the summer it gets really hot, and there are people who want to be able to kind of escape from that heat and sun.
Everybody, as you said, Ron.
Yeah.
Right now, you have the bay off to one side, but you have no access or view of that amenity. And by opening up, by raising this up, by naturally you get that openness on 270 degrees. And it becomes a usable space that you have this space now as a public space, but you add that space. And they're two different kinds of spaces.
This space below becomes like a kind of a community recreation room, like a family room for the whole community that's out of doors, for lounging, for ping pong, for games, for snacks, and potentially also a space for events, because this is summertime. People are living outside, so your ice cream Thursday could take place actually out of doors in that underspace that we're looking at. It connects, this is important too, it connects very easily with the space above. There are two open staircases, one at the end.
That connects to the balcony.
And
the
the main staircase, which is extra wide, which leads to the entrance to what we're calling the club space. Next slide, please. That's the site plan, just to give you a sense of the context. But the building's in the same place as it's always been. But you can see how you enter, you walk down the road and enter at the corner. Pete, maybe you can just
here.
Yeah, there's a handicapped accessible ramp because the elevation of the recreation space, that underspace, is about a little less than 1.5 feet above the parking lot area. It's a little bit elevated. Again, to just keep it free from kind of normal flooding and blown.
Well, it separates it from the parking lot. That by raising it up, it creates a bench that people could sit on around the perimeter. And that works especially well at the bayside, where you can sit on the elevated platform and look at the bay, watch what's going on, or look at the corner. And then it also separates from parking lots. You don't feel like you're in the parking lot when you're in that space.
Yeah. So it's a welcoming corner. The corner is kind of opened up, and you maybe you should show that elevation again. Can you go back to that? There, that one. Yes.
So this is the open corner.
Right. And it's got, the OBYC kind of like the logo. Oh, it's got the OBYC logo. And also there's a banner that marks the entry over there. Okay, you can go forward now.
Ground level?
Yeah, that's the ground floor level plan. So you go up that wide staircase. It's a protected, covered staircase.
One up here.
Yeah, it's at the very top. Or you can enter the entry and take an elevator. The elevator is a necessary piece of this. It's a code requirement, but it's also an amenity that you really want to provide for older people to easily get up to that level. It's a largish elevator. It's big enough to accommodate a stretcher. It's also big enough to accommodate the large tables, so that it gives those tables more versatile use on both levels. And I'll talk a little bit later about food. I guess I'm still thinking about those donuts, and more too. So there aren't that many elements here. You can see there's that entry, the elevator. There's a little hall that leads to the men's and women's room on that grade level. There's a general storage space, which would be especially useful for the games and ping pong tables and so forth that would be used in the recreation area. And there's an oversized garage that's also big enough to accommodate additional storage. My hunch is that we want to provide more storage at this level. I think we will probably need that. But it's a real fight between providing that storage and also creating a generous recreation area. That's the kind of thing that gets worked out as we look at this in more and more detail. And there's also a trash area that shows in the site plan, but take my word for it, it's in this kind of utility courtyard. And it's visually isolated or separated from the walkway by some probably high beach grass and maybe some beach plums, so you don't look into the utility courtyard as you enter the building. All right. There's an important space here too that I call service. It's not really a very good word for it, but it's next to the elevator, as you see there. And that becomes like the office on grade level. I'm looking at Eileen now, but that could be where you pick up your beach tags, but it could have other functions too, like the ice cream could be served from there. It could become a snack bar, for instance. So we'll talk more about this later, but there's potential for sort of new things that the members can do with their building.
And that's actually one of the things that we want you to think about, is that when Ron started, he said that this was not the building. And as you consider this further, it's important that you think of opportunities that this building doesn't have, or that a new building could have, that could be added. And we would welcome all those suggestions moving forward, because this is an opportunity. And again, what's drawn here is basically a version of this building elevated, because that's what you have now. That was the starting point. But it also has potential for other things that you don't have, and use your imaginations. And it can be part of the conversation.
On a practical level, the ground floor spaces here would not be conditioned spaces, except possibly the elevator lobby, but probably they would not be air conditioned or heated. There might be ancillary heat for certain cold weather events, not during the summer. The summer experience really got our priority. And I think that's probably the case for all you club members. It's like, this is a place to finally relax, get away from work, be with your families and have fun. And I've been really stuck with that idea to try to really concentrate. It's casual, it's relaxed, and it's fun. And the building in many ways is as simple as we could make it. It has these basic components, and that's all. Let's see. You can go to what happens then, you take the stairs up to the main level, and now
Or that.
Yeah. You can see the two main staircases. You can see the bleachers. Is this still on?
I don't know. This
Yeah.
one over there.
Yeah, good, okay. And when you reach the top of the stairs, there's a kind of a balcony before you enter the conditioned space of the building. That's where you can yell out to your kids who are dawdling below to come on upstairs already. And right ahead of you is the office and a service window even before you enter the building.
I'm not tall enough.
It's at the very top. See, the top right corner is the office. So the office is in a kind of a key location there. And the elevator, also lands here at this part where you're entering. The elevator reminds me to tell you that part of the reason that the building has to expand in its basic footprint is it has an elevator, which takes up some real space. We also have to accommodate handicap accessibility requirements, so the bathrooms have to be much bigger than the ones that you have now. We need to accommodate egress stairs as well, so they take up space. And it just meant that there was a little bit of pressure to give you at least the same size assembly space, but also accommodate these other needs. And so as you enter, right in front of you, there's a display case. And let's keep the same slide.
Sorry.
Oh, she's, yeah, right
Yeah.
there. That's your, can't have the clubhouse without the trophies and the photographs. And it's really important to like anchor this clubhouse in its own history and remind future generations of where everyone came from. So I wanted that to be part of the welcome before you enter this big space. When you're in that larger space, which I'll show you in a moment, oh, thanks. When you turn around, you see there's where the service counter of the kitchen would be. And there's the beloved library that you can't do without here as well. And then the entrance into the storage area. The elevator, just a little practical note here. It would be great if this were a 2-door elevator, because then there would be a keyed doorway into the kitchen, and it would allow the kitchen to essentially serve the underspace as well. Food can be prepared in that kitchen and easily brought down to serve that underspace that we were talking about. So it's something to keep in mind. There's an angled ceiling. This club space is really generous. And there's an angled ceiling that begins in this entry area and gets higher and higher as you progress to the west.
No columns.
Peter reminds me, no columns in this new space. This is a clear span all the way across, almost 45 feet. And you're drawn into this, you can go to the next slide, you're drawn into this main space, and then the space lifts up and up, out towards the waters of the bay. So it's a gesture that you really feel, I think, when you enter. And it's, the ceiling height starts at 11 feet and rises to almost 16 feet at the far end, at the western end. So this space, this is just black and white. We didn't do color for this, didn't have the budget. but it's evocative, I think. And it has clearly familiar echoes of your present clubhouse in a way, but now it's like the elevated deck of a ship, because you're riding over all this. You're way up in the air now, and you have these wonderful views. So it's still a simple and unfancy space in many respects, but it's lavish in light and in openness and in views. So the luxury in this is that it's not like fancy materials. It's more about the feeling of being at the shore and being able to like see the views, see the water, and feel the openness of it all. And no columns.
Mhm.
You can see here too how the structure on the outside, that it's like an exoskeleton on the outside, frees the building to be transparent like that. Like if we had to brace this building by using opaque walls, then you just have walls with punched windows in them to stabilize the building. But by putting the structure on the outside, we're free to open it up. At the west end, at the end of this view, this is one other luxurious element. It's not a fancy material, it's a somewhat costly element, which is a 20-foot wide opening. That is, there are 5 door panels, glass door panels at the end that can fold to either side and create an opening that's so generous that you feel like you're out of doors. And for certain occasions, it would be just wonderful to do that, because then this space becomes just connected to the underspace, easily reached. And it's like having a party, opening the patio doors, and people are outside and inside at the same time, and just kind of wandering from one to another. In a house, same kind of thing can happen here. So on those occasions, the 2 floors really can intermingle. At kind of normal times, the center panel, which you don't see here, but you'll see in the elevation, would be the operable door, the required egress door. So this club space leads out onto the west-facing deck and the bleachers that I was telling you about. Just really nice for that whole sunset spectacle every day. You can go to the next one. That's the view on the west side. So you can see it like really opens up to the world. And you can see it like at the very top, there's a shading, like a visor at the very top that allows the passage of wind, because structurally there'd be really serious uplift problems and high wind times. But it will create a really nice effect, I think, too, of like Venetian blind kind of shadows on that elevation. Here you can see there are these X-shaped rods with turnbuckles as well. That stabilizes this wall because we didn't want to introduce heavy bracing at this like prime elevation. So we didn't want to block the view at all there. And you can see these bleachers like for hanging out. There's steps down, but there are also seats. And they invite other possible uses as well. Things for you to think about, some ceremonies or concerts or competitions or performances. Now there's like a way to accommodate a kind of an audience. When we got here this morning, Bill forbade us to use sand, and this can't use the sand, it gets blown around onto the parking lot. Okay, we'll just show the gravel. When we got here, we said, yes, the shells, the crushed shells, that's it. So please, you gotta imagine that as
Shaking
crushed,
his head.
right?
We'll talk about it.
You don't like the crushed shells? They look good anyway. But you can see this, the underneath space, you know, can you zoom in on that a little bit?
I'm gonna switch to the PDF for that one.
Okay. That underneath space is really great. Like there's so much potential there. It's inexpensive to occupy outdoor space, and it suggests other possibilities that might be of interest to members and their families. Maybe it's an occasional farmer's market or a crafts fair. This is would be great for you to suggest that, because this is an evolving club. He's going in. Yeah, you just get a little bit of sense. Ignore the people. They're not wearing the right clothes or anything. Just go past that.
Where do I want to go?
I don't know. There's a lot of wine drinking going on here,
Oh,
but
boy.
anyway.
Go to the,
But you can get a sense.
go
Yeah.
the other way.
That way?
The other way.
Other
Oh,
way.
this way? This way.
That's it, stop there.
And you can see, because that, as Peter was saying, because that under area's floor is elevated, that's a real seat. Like you can hang out.
Sit there.
Right.
And we've shown just some kind of Adirondack chairs and just like standard picnic tables, just the treated wood picnic tables, so that you can imagine as a family maybe having a birthday party there, or maybe having a group, if you have a group that's too large for your small house, and that you can kind of show up. Or if you're at the beach and you just want to go in the shade and have lunch, you have a place to do that. So this is really a very multifunctional space, and now it has views out to the bay. And as I said, that's the concept anyway. It becomes just a free open space to use as you feel.
This new clubhouse, here's the point. Like this is the punchline in a way. It replicates all the functions of your existing clubhouse, but it also affords OBYC a chance to imagine a house for new events and functions, for the present and for the future. And it's a chance to give the membership more opportunities to use this clubhouse for other functions. So in effect, you've got to rebuild this place, right? You've got to protect against flood. If you're going to be responsible about the people who follow you in life, you need to do a new one here. And it's kind of, it's going to be painful to get through all that, but it's just the responsible thing to do. But we're urging you to like make the most of this opportunity. So I really thank you for inviting me. It's been such a pleasure to think about this, to get into the detail of it, and to present our work to you today.
Okay.
I think, do we want to have questions, or what do you want to do? Yeah, let's take, go ahead.
I'll post them all.
Larry Monaco.
Oh, yeah.
3208 Scar. I have a question. I see a lot of glass. How does it stand up for wind mitigation?
It's going to be a major structural thing. And you can respond to this too, but the mullions between successive panes, like the verticals that you see there, would be structural. They'd have real depth to them. Pete, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, what,
Here.
I think, can you guys hear me?
It's for the people on the camera.
Oh, no, they can hear him on that.
I mean, in order to present this building, we actually talked to both mechanical engineer and a structural engineer about the project. What we're imagining is that the tall windows are actually an aluminum storefront system, which is actually economical compared to wood.
Right.
And that what they do is they can actually, it's a hollow tube, and they actually reinforce it with steel if they need to. So they calculate the wind load, and they actually put whatever steel is required inside the hollow tube. And that's what you see if you see commercial buildings with large walls like this. It's the same system.
What about the glass itself? Does it impact?
Well, the glass, we'd have to look at that. The glass could be tempered and laminated. It's an insulated glass, probably 1 inch thick for thermal. It maybe have a light tint to it to reduce heat gain on the interior. There's a lot of technology, argon filled and all kinds of things like that can go with it. But the 2 layers of glass can be tempered, they can be tempered laminated. There's a combination of both.
Just one more note about that this is a harsh environment. This is a marine environment, and the paint has to be a special paint. The windows have to be able to be impact resistant. There's this salt air. So part of the expense of the building actually would be these just inevitable requirements to make an enduring structure that's made of the right material.
Maybe you guys want to talk a little bit about your experience. I mean, you guys don't just do residential buildings, and I know Peter has done giant buildings in New York City, and so, just so you guys understand where these guys are coming from and their experience and background. So I just wanted to make that clear.
I'll go first, but you've got even more. I have some experience with that. Certainly at Michael Graves' office, I was the job captain for a winery in the Napa Valley. That was a nice monthly trip, I can tell you right now. And in my own office, I've done projects. I've done, there's a Whole Earth Center in Princeton. I worked on a food court. I don't know if anybody knew the Market Fair food court, but I designed that as well. So I have experience with commercial architecture as well as residential. Pete has lots here.
Yeah, I worked with Hillier. I worked with Michael Graves Architecture for almost 37 years. It's a large firm. Michael Graves was a large firm. At one point, we were 120 people and do projects all around the world. I'm still helping out part-time just to close out 2 10-story schools in the Bronx, charter schools. I just finished a 25-story hotel in Cairo, which opened recently. St. Regis, if you're ever in Cairo, look it up. And I've done basically every kind of building you can think of. The advantage to working for Michael Graves is that I've done everything from single-family houses to 600-foot statues. and everything in between, dormitories, classroom. There's a classroom building at the University of Virginia, dormitories at NJIT. So I have a range of experience in basically every building type you can think of.
There was only one 600-foot statue, by the way. He put it in the plural. No. Just something really important to mention about Peter's experience is he was the technical guy at Michael Graves Architect. He was the guy who knew and knows how to put buildings together. And everyone, all the artsy people in the Michael Graves office had to eventually come to Peter.
Oh, shucks.
and get his knowledge about how to actually assemble a building that is enduring.
It was very nice. But I'm just curious because I thought when you raised, you can't put like plumbing underneath. I thought that was the whole thing.
It can be done. It can be done. But that area would be, it's very, very simple. It's made of concrete block. Need I say that we have to have, flood vents in any of those? And this is going to require further research, but there is a way of doing the plumbing. Where they're backflow preventing.
And there's different criteria for residential.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
How students are.
No, but it's a good concern.
Curious, you come up with some kind of budget?
That's our next presentation.
Yeah. So we actually got a finance guy coming here. He's in the back. But yeah.
I'm surprised that's the fourth question.
Yeah, that was good.
Pretty good.
I love the glass, but is there any way to change?
Yes.
That's a really important detail, but yes, we have.
That sun will come burning through.
I know all about it. Fine.
In the back.
Go ahead. Tom Bierzeski, 242 Melody Lane. You began the presentation by referring to the sense of community and warmth that Ocean Beach has. What was the reason you decided to go with the glass and steel look, very contemporary look, for something like our community?
Good. It's a good question. There isn't steel in this. Like those big timbers they're made of wood, right? But it's a community of, I thought about this a lot. It's a community of houses. And it's like, it needs to have its own big house, but I felt like it didn't want to look like a house. Because then it would just look like one of the really large, would be some version of a large house that you see along the ocean or a country club. I felt that this should have more the spirit of, like, as I said at the beginning, the lifeguard station. It's funny that I didn't think of that consciously, but when I showed the image way back to Bill, he said, "Oh, it looks like a California lifeguard station." And I felt that a structure that has that kind of a simple summer pavilion quality would be more appropriate for the community. And so that was my thinking about it. I respect your question, though. It's a good point.
And I think one more thing I'd add to that, Ron, is that, we had a lot of discussion about, with Ron and his team, was about, we have this amazing point that we own, right? And it's been underutilized from the view perspective. Like Ron pointed out, our back porch has now been turned into storage rooms and offices, and we have one whole side of our building that isn't, like, from anywhere in the room you can't see anything. And so we thought about, when we elevated the building, the opportunity to see, like Ron pointed out, on 270 degrees, the amazing view we have. We just wanted to maximize that, and I think that's part of why there's so much glass. But I respect and understand your point about it being, glass isn't always considered to be warm. So no, I think your point is well taken. Mr. Burns, yeah.
Roger Burns, 222 South Lagoon Lane. What's the proposed height of the building?
Ooh.
you have it on one of the
It says
sheets?
16-foot interior space
Hang on.
at the highest point. I was just wondering.
What's the base,
I
11?
think it's the highest point, it would be less than 30.
Or much less than 30.
At the, like, very high
Phone,
point.
please.
Sorry? Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna say, don't quote us on this, but it's probably around 25 feet.
Just one more thing. My house is on the cove right here, and I was here during that Dorado storm recently. I just sat down to eat, and I saw that thing come across the bay, and I have one of the only two-story houses. I was upstairs like Superman holding my big window up, and I'll tell you, that you're gonna have to deal with that.
I know it. I know.
It was like a
No,
fire
I-
hose on the window, you know?
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn, if I may.
Yeah, sorry.
52 Harbor Drive. It's a very nice design, and obviously a lot of work went into it. But my question is to the board. And was the membership ever canvassed as to why we should even need a new clubhouse? And how the membership even feels about getting a new clubhouse? Because a lot of money went into this, we can see. Why are we at this point without the membership having any voice
I can answer.
up to this point?
Maybe, can I take the lead?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, we've talked about this over the last year. And we felt that to have a real dialogue and to really have a discussion about what this could be, we felt it was a worthwhile investment to be able to propose something to discuss. When you propose an idea and you have nothing to look at or nothing to reference to, we felt that it was worth the initial investment to have something to discuss, something to look at, something to perhaps generate some excitement about. Yes?
So Bill, my question becomes, what is the cost of an initial investment? And is there a limit as to what that investment cost should be before the membership is canvassed?
Well, we do, in our regulations, our rules, the board can make decisions. What are we up to? What's our cost without a general membership discussion?
10, up to 10 without, for emergencies.
Right.
Just for emergencies.
No, that's not true.
Not just emergencies.
We've changed some of the rules.
All right.
Not because of this project. Well prior to this project, those rules were changed. The rules were changed due to Sandy, because the board had to make decisions during Sandy recovery about fixing this building and other things that were happening in the community, that, you know, the limits that were put in previously weren't really
And that was
realistic.
actually viral, yeah.
Yeah.
But let me just mention, the membership will be the ones to vote on this. The membership
Yeah, I mean, this is-
has the choice whether they want to move forward. But in order to give the membership a choice, there was a feasibility study done. And these aren't architectural plans. These aren't like blueprints that you would have to build. This is a artist's rendering of what potentially could be. We have Mike going to speak about the financial aspect. He was given a top number. I want to take his thunder. He'll tell you he was given a top number and he can talk about the finances. So these, we're going to have next week boards that show all of these. They're going to be on display all summer in the clubhouse. They're going to be online. There'll be all the financial information. And then we don't know exactly how we're going to do the vote yet, whether we do an in-person vote, a postcard. We've just been discussing that. But after the whole community has had probably 2 months to absorb this, ask questions, look at the finances, look at everything, then there'll be a vote. And if the membership says no, we don't go forward. So but there had to be some money spent to be able to give the membership an educated vote to say yay or nay. I mean, that's.
And my question is, what was the amount of money
Okay,
that
there
can be
was
spent?
6,000, 2,500, it was initial 2,500. Then there was the 6,000 with all of these drawings. I think that was it. I mean, I would have to actually look back, maybe, I don't know if Dan is here, if he has the information there, but I know there was 6 and I know there was 25, the initial feasibility. And then there was a survey done, and that, we needed to do regardless because they actually had Harbor Drive going down into the gazebo and that, so we had to get some things worked out with that. But that was just getting our regular survey done, which needed to be done. But that was all part of the feasibility to know, would we even be allowed to build another structure in this place because of setbacks and all, it's not legit, but we are being, I don't know, grandfathered in with the.
Yes, I think the answer to Rudy's question was, it's approximately $10,000 with the survey, with the work that Ron's done with his team. So it's about $10,000 we've invested so far.
But that's the survey.
Including the survey, yep. Which we had to do. Yes.
Question for the architect. I know you have an elevator, but there are many of us that are certain age that also do not like getting into elevators, okay? I was wondering if there was a walkway that will go around that will bring you, for disability, will bring you up to the second level instead of stairs.
We don't have that.
It's not in the current design, but it's something we can talk about.
You know, that has to be thought about, because most, I mean, a lot of people don't like getting into elevators, and also they might not be able to take the stairs to the second level.
Yep.
So, I noticed you have a nice, you know, place where you can view upstairs, so if you had something that went around totally.
Yeah, we'll take it into consideration.
Thank you,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Anybody else in the back?
Tom Pierzewski, 242 Melody. I heard some discussion also about harbor being raised. I'm not sure how that works, but is that taken into consideration with this design as well?
It won't impact the part of harbor that'll be elevated. My understanding is it will not impact this area.
I wondered that too, because I read about that just recently. I thought,
Anybody else? Yes.
Since the
Sorry.
board has already gone this far, I would like to see a polling of the members right now to see if you are in favor of this or opposed to it.
Well, why don't we talk money first?
Yeah, well, let's finish the presentation because that may sway people the other way or, you know.
Actually, we can do that, John.
Judy.
We
let's go
can
to
do that, but
yeah,
let's get.
yeah, we're gonna do it.
Information. Right.
Judy?
Curious to know the exact footage of that. Is it the same amount of space as this?
It's about 3,400, right, Ron? 3,400-ish? Just a little more.
Well, it's the same size as this building. It's roughly the same size.
It's a
This
little
building's
bit.
approximately 80 by 40, 3,200, and Ron added like the shed space to it.
This is 80 by, I think it's more like 43
Okay.
or 45.
Okay.
It's a little bit.
It's a little bit bigger. The footprint.
No.
No.
Not much.
Also, I live right here on Down Cove, and I have all glass on the water side. And I gotta tell you, if I had to design my house again, I would not have all that glass.
These guys are experts. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, we totally understand.
It's so hot year round.
Yeah.
You can't get our air conditioner to lower the temperature inside because of all the glass and the sun just shining on the house.
Yeah.
And if you open up all the glass, the winds are so bad.
Yeah.
I just don't see this function at all.
Well, I mean, I think from the heating and cooling part, like Pete, like you pointed out, just built a building in Cairo, in Egypt. So I mean, I think that these guys will figure out the heating and cooling part, but we appreciate your comment.
No.
I even had, last year we had it done. We had somebody come in and professionally put UV filming all over the whole house. And still, it's always 85 degrees inside my house.
Now, what we didn't show in the renderings is that the windows would, one, be shaded. There'd be shades that come down.
Who wants that? If you have this-
Well, again, the shades don't have to be opaque. The shades can be 70%, 80%. They can be white on the outside for reflectance. There's a number of combinations that you can have for shades. And we also discussed the fact that when you do insulated glass, you can tint the glass to various percentages of tint that also reflect. And you can put a reflective layer on the space between the two pieces of glass that reflects out. And you can put gas between the two layers that's an insulator. And in addition to that, we have a mechanical engineer on the team that will design the HVAC system to accommodate the loads. So he'll calculate the loads in the building and design the system to accommodate it.
But let me say, another way of handling that is to have shading devices on the outside, but it's not really feasible for this building because of the high winds. So if you were listening at the beginning, we really want your comments. Like, I stand humbly before you about this. We expect that there'll be this give and take. And if it turns out that the consensus is, let's like tone it down on the glass here, we will imaginatively find wonderful solutions to that. Like we're very used to having to like roll with the punches and then finding a nice answer for a problem. So thanks for that. It's welcome.
Eric Negley at 207 Melody. First off, Bill, I want to thank you for kind of taking the initiative and leading this effort. I think, what makes the community so great, or Ocean Beach Unit 2 so great, is kind of the community. It makes it generational. And you look around here and you look at all the improvements that everyone's made to their home, and it really looks beautiful. But what's been left behind was kind of the heart of the community here. And I think this drawing, while everyone can work through details, I think it's really great. I think it gives an opportunity for people to kind of get out here. And I know you were speaking to the drawings, but the elevated platform and just being able to look at it almost gives you kind of an infinity view of the entire bay. But I just wanted to kind of thank you for it, and I do think there needs to be upgraded to the community space that we have here to keep pace with all of the other improvements we have around the community.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Is there any question?
Yes. Mary Ann.
To Barbara, how much more money has to be put into this before the actual vote goes on? We're up to 10,000 now.
None.
It's just based on
Yeah,
what we see.
the decisions will be made based upon what we've done.
So none of
The community will vote on what
said
we've seen
here.
today. Yep.
None of those revisions will be put into a further rendering. Right?
No. Exactly. I mean, we didn't want to take it. We wanted to get it to the point where it was a good discussion about people could make comments whether they like the structure or the building or the design or the shape, and just have something to talk about, a conversation. So like I said, the board felt strongly, and we were all in agreement about spending the initial investment to get us to the point to have a conversation.
Well, I appreciate the work that went into that. You can see how much work has been done and the rendering. But I think you missed a basic assumption, and that is, do we need a new clubhouse?
Well, yeah, and I have discussed some of those things in the last two meetings that we've had. Last summer, in the last year, this clubhouse has had water in it 7 times in the last 365 days. So the people who are here to mop that up is Eileen and some of her crew. So it hasn't had 2 feet of water, but it's had several inches in some of the low spots that Peter noted that in some places were below grade. And so, and the team who re-put this clubhouse back together after Sandy did a phenomenal job, and it is somewhat resilient. But the board felt it wasn't a sustainable future to continually mop and clean and what's the next event that happens where potentially we lose the clubhouse and then our membership doesn't have this asset for years or who knows how long. So like I said, we knew not everybody would agree, and that's okay. It's a healthy dialogue, and I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk about it after the meeting, whatever. But we're never going to get 100% consensus on anything we do, right? And we're very comfortable with that and okay with that. And we just wanted to have a dialogue, so that was really easy. Anybody else?
I think the important is the financial. I absolutely love this clubhouse because I've been here since 1975. And my feelings are when another Sandy comes by, God forbid if it comes by, and knocks it totally down, then we should do that.
We respect your opinion.
Yeah, I just,
Thank you.
that's why I wanted to know how big it was and everything else, but.
No, and I think there's going to be a percentage of the community that completely agrees with you. And this is going to come down to what does the community want? It's not about what I want or what Ron wants or the board wants. It's about what does the community want? And we just wanted to present something to have a discussion, like I said, and you guys are going to vote on it. And, you know, maybe we'll never talk about it again. Maybe we'll be talking about it for years to come. I don't know.
Or if it's turned down and there is, God forbid, an event like that again, some legwork has been done.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know.
It only costs us $20 a house.
There you go.
1,000 divided by 492 houses, it costs us $20.
Great way to look at it.
Yeah, no, the finance guy's going to use some of that dialogue, so you guys hold on. More to come. Yeah, Mike, come on up. Yeah.
That was awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Well done.
So I'd like to present, this is Mike LaParry. This is another part of the sort of the homegrown. Mike, you know, has grown up in Seacrest right next door to us. He was a lifeguard at Seacrest for many years, worked with Eric and some of our team here. So, you know, when I initially had this conversation, by the way, Mike hasn't charged us anything yet to have this discussion. He's done all this work on his own time and dime. And so, you know, we're super appreciative of the time and effort that Mike has put into this. So I'm going to let him talk about this. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. So I just want to start off by thanking Bill and the board for allowing me this opportunity because I've really enjoyed it. Also membership to give me the opportunity just to present. It's a financial plan. It's not an exact science, but it's truly a financial plan to potentially finance the construction and development of a new clubhouse. And what made it very fun for me, like Bill mentioned, I'm a lifelong Seacrest resident on Ivy Lane. Our family owns a home there, and it's on the border of Harbor Drive, so I'd like to think I'm the closest thing to membership without being a member. Was junior lifeguard from the late 80s, early 90s with Mark, who was here before. Became great friends with a lot of the members, still have lifelong friendships in the community. That's afforded me the opportunity to finance a lot of the residential homes here. So I had a great understanding of the community from just personal knowledge and coming here every summer of my entire life. But now it's gotten to the point where I finance many of the residential homes in the community because of those relationships that give me a knowledge there. So that coupled with, you know, being a partner and vice president of Bond Street Mortgage, in my opinion, is a great combination because it's allowing me to have that inside knowledge of your community. It's giving me the enjoyment of it because my mom, I think, walks down here every night for the sunset, and I join as much as I can. So it's something that I've really enjoyed. I've had some great conversations with the board and with Bill. So for that, I'm very appreciative. If you don't mind going to the next slide there, Shane. So the agenda here, Clubhouse Strategic Financing Plan. So I want to discuss a financing strategy during the construction phase, and I'll go through those numbers. We're going to create a strategic plan to minimize the interest exposure during the life of the loan. We'll review estimated carrying costs from start to finish. We're going to review the short and long-term financing strategies, and we'll summarize the process and next steps from there. So the construction phase. Thought this through quite a bit as far as the most cost-effective way to go about this for the club. Whenever we do construction financing, whether it's a residential home, a commercial property, we want to limit the interest exposure throughout that process. And the way you do that is make sure you set up a schedule during construction that it's only an interest-only payment. And that interest-only payment that I'm using, and please understand that these are estimated terms because we don't know if this will definitely take place. We don't know when it will take place. So I've cushioned my numbers from a standpoint of the total budget of the building of the clubhouse if it occurs and the interest rate in terms. I've always run my business to be super conservative on terms and amounts. So my model that I'll be using is an estimated interest rate of 5.25%. And those will be interest-only payments that will be due monthly to the club during the construction phase. Membership will have the opportunity to pay off the entire balance of that construction loan upon completion when that final CO is given. Membership that elect to pay their portion in full at the conclusion of the construction are incentivized by avoiding any additional interest exposure because we will give a second component of this where if members elected to finance their portion over a 5, 10, 15-year period of time. So if the entire membership elects to pay off the balance in full at the conclusion of construction, the bank that will be the end financer will have a 1% exit fee, which is important to know going into it to incentivize the whole club. We've financed communities of development where we've seen it go either way. We've seen where membership is happy that in a 10, 12, 18-month period of time to develop the project, the membership has decided to divvy it up over, I believe, we use 492 homes for the community, but that option will be there. And that is something that can provide a benefit to membership, but also giving the choice of being able to spread out the portion per household over a period of time. Please go to the next slide. So the construction phase estimated carrying costs. So I'll read through these, and it's probably small for those in the back. But essentially, there's no exact science of how the draw schedules will go. So I used easy round numbers for everyone to be able to follow. I did 10 draws of $250,000 per draw. So naturally, that's $2.5 million. Bill and I discussed this, and I do not have any budgets. I don't think it's certainly not gotten to that point. So to me, again, I want to use a high number for simply calculation purposes to give the club a vision of what it will cost each member. So essentially, the following scenarios assume monthly draws of $250,000 over a 10-month period. As I said, those draw amounts and timing can certainly vary, assuming that $2.5 million. And the way that the draw schedule works, whether you're developing a residential property or a commercial property, is the contractor, the builder, will request draws upon completion of the phase of the construction. Now, we want to have a happy medium of, you don't want it to be a very choppy process that the builder has to ask for $10,000 every other week. It needs to be a healthy balance of draws that will be established in the phases of completion and not being too choppy. And we're also not about to have the club write a check for have the interest exposure of $2.5 million when you sure as heck aren't going to need $2.5 million during that first phase. So it's really well thought out from a logistical standpoint. At closing, this is also important. At the time of closing, with this particular structure, because approvals have to happen, zoning, we've all probably been through it with townships. It's a process. We have to get that approved. The last thing I would want, though, is the financing of this to delay construction. So one of the nice components of this structure is the loan can close, and there's not a requirement of a draw at time of closing. So the clock does not start of interest calculations until these draws occur. So it's a very proactive approach to have the funding sitting there on the sidelines, ready to go when those approvals come through. So it's important to know that this is purposely set out in an estimated 10-month structure because we don't know how long that will be. But it's important for membership to know that when I really thought this through, how do I minimize interest exposure? How do I keep this running as smoothly as possible? We want that liquidity to be available when the contractor's ready to go to the next step. We don't want the club to be paying interest on money that's not needed yet. So it's very important. So there's a 10 to 15% retainage on the disbursement of funds for each phase. So important for this factor. If a contractor requests a $500,000 draw for the second phase, third phase, whatever that may be, the bank will hold 10 to 15% of that to ensure proper inspections are completed. Now, my team, we'll act as the liaisons. We will be involved in every step of the way, but we will make sure that proper inspections are done of that work to make sure not only what was said to be done is completed, but it was done adequately. So 10 to 15% of that is held back until that inspection is done. Can't hold it all back because it would stop the flow of the work, but 10 to 15% per draw will be held back as a way to really make sure everything's running as planned and that the work is being done adequately and to the standards of all involved. And naturally, the board and membership would be welcome to be involved in that as each phase. So during the time of, again, 10 months, it could be considered a lofty goal in the construction world with some of the challenges out there today. We look at these types of projects on a 12 to 18-month goal for the construction to be completed. I use 10 months because it was easy to keep the numbers round. So if this held true, Over the 10 months, it would cost $60,160 to the overall membership to build and develop a new clubhouse. I used 492 homes, which I believe was correct. Okay. So if I divide that by 492 homes, I think you were stealing my thunder there, but it's $122.28 per household to cover the interest over that time. So again, that would be up to the board, up to the membership, how that would be collected from membership, but it would be divided up per household just for the construction phase. That's the important part that I want to make sure I'm clear on, is this is just for while construction happens. We're going to have options and choices after the construction completes. Closing costs, very estimated at this point, but to give an idea to the club and membership, estimated total closing costs, $89,500 divided by membership would be $181.91. Now that includes environmentals, legal fees. Again, I don't have enough data to sit here and give you I'm going to give you estimates soon, but same thing. I want to be very conservative. So if we're talking about the first component of, if this gets approved, construction is going to begin, we want to get the loan closed. We get that loan closed, it can sit on pause for as long as needed for the development to begin. At time of closing, the closing costs will be due. So at that time, at least $181.91 will be due per household because the loan needs to close. Up to membership in the club, how we would want to handle the interest payments, because it's a moving target. I cannot give you an exact science of how much that will be, because naturally, the longer the project will take, if it goes out to 18 months, the interest exposure is longer, and then that will be more. But this is, I wanted to give the visual of the 2.5 million is a heck of a lot of money, but when you break it down on an interest-only basis over that 10-month period per household, in my opinion, they're favorable numbers. Any questions on that breakdown before I go to the next slide?
You said that was the interest only. What about the whole cost per household?
Okay. Yes. That's so great question. What I'm starting with, the way I'm breaking this presentation down is I want to show everyone what it's going to cost during construction and until completion. Then we're going to have membership will have the opportunity to pay their share in lump sum at that time. The choice will be there. If membership does not feel comfortable, or one member decides they're just not in a position, does not want to pay that lump sum, I have a visual here to break that down into 5 years, what we're suggesting. So that'll be broken down in a few slides. Next slide, please.
Yeah, one more question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Also, I know when you pay just interest, sometimes it becomes a point where there's a balloon payment. What will that balloon payment be?
So it's not necessarily a balloon payment. We're allotting 12 to 18 months of time for this to be built because of all of the variables. At that time, when the final CO is issued, it's not a balloon payment. It's really a choice on what membership decides to do. If it's going to be financing that balance long term or paying it off in full at that time. So if to answer your question, if the entire membership voted, great, we financed the construction, this went well, we're not interested in financing the remainder. Great, then you don't have to. Then the entire membership would split a 1% exit fee to whichever bank ends up servicing that loan. So if it's a $2.5 million loan, it would cost the club $25,000 to exit the loan. Because again, the key thing I want everyone to understand is on the commercial lending side, I'm on your team. I'm a liaison. I'm setting up plans and best strategies. Any bank that will end up servicing this, if they're extending $2 million, $2.5 million, of course they have to have the interest that they'll collect. But by the end, a 1% exit fee is the best I've seen in a while. I shopped this around. I did a lot of research where there were places where it was a 5% exit fee. So the way to think about it is if a bank is offering this much liquidity and leverage to build and construct this place, at the end, the bank's either going to want to be able to finance it and earn more interest over time or allow the exit fee of the 1%. So it's not so much a balloon, it's more of you have choices. A balloon is more so pay us in full and
it's probably more likely that it'll be financed over a period of time,
Yep.
more than paying it off at the end.
Yep, have that
So
done in a couple
you
slides.
need to know.
Absolutely, that's coming next. Any other questions on that before we move on?
Are we eligible for a PPP type of loan?
It would not apply to, not to this type of commercial.
Ready?
Yep. So I will read these out. So estimated immediate payoff options. So I just want to summarize, again, this is if the entire membership agrees that they don't want this to convert to, it's a construction to permanent loan. The membership has decided we don't want long-term financing. What do we do? So essentially the closing costs, how I broke it down, was through bank origination fees, the exit fee, if it's paid in full. Again, that's 1% of the 2.5 million. You've got appraisal fees, environmental fees, attorney fees, club attorney and title fees, Bond Street mortgage consulting and processing fees, miscellaneous third-party fees. Those are the itemized amounts. And as Bill mentioned, I'm enjoying this. I hope the club does it. I think it's a great idea. I'm not charging a penny for this. I'm enjoying doing this. This is something that I've come to this clubhouse my whole life, and I'm doing this out of enjoyment. My wife and I now have a home on the other side of the bay, and if there's a time that I can be on the water and see a new clubhouse that I was a part of, that'll sit home well with me. So the estimated costs if the exit fee is applied. So that includes a $25,000 exit fee. That will be $114,500. That's the breakdown. So the estimated total loan amount again was $2.5 million. If the club elects, we are paying this in full, we don't want to finance this, that naturally would be remaining balance, because remember, the closing costs were taken care of. The interest to service the debt was already taken care of because that happened already. We fast forwarded now to 18 months from the beginning. 492 households, it would cost $5,132.12. That would be all 492 households that say, we're in, we're all paying it, it's done. That's what it would cost per household. On example one, this is no longer financing anything. This is financing of course, the initial phase of construction and the closing figures. So it'd be $5,132.12. Again, remember, please, this is assuming a $2.5 million budget. If the budget is lower, these numbers just go down. I feel confidently and comfortable in saying that I don't see them going higher. Bill, agreed?
We any rule of negotiation, right? You don't ever want to bump it up because that just makes people angry.
Yep.
So we felt that starting around 2.5 was a realistic, reasonable number. And like Mike said, maybe it could go down, but we felt comfortable around that number. So that's why we used it. And like Mike said, it's a moving target.
It is.
But that was in the ballpark we felt comfortable in.
I had a Zoom call with the board probably about a year ago. Bill and I have had some conversations that I thoroughly have just enjoyed. We've talked it through. How can we make these numbers work the best for membership where it's not too confused, it's not too elaborate? How is it going to be most cost effective and what's best for the members? And we want to give the members choices. I'm not here saying figure it out. 492 houses, we have to pay it off. Like, I want to give options. I want to make sure I'm clear on the fact that there will be options. You can go next one, please. So the long-term financing options. This is, again, remember, it doesn't have to be a vote of, you can have a choice in my model here. You can have a choice as per household if you're electing to be part of, I want to pay it in full, which can be incentivized because there's less interest exposure, or you know what, I'd like to spread this out over some time so it's just easier for our plan, essentially. So estimated interest rates, another moving target. We're not sure when this will be locked in, when we'll proceed, if we proceed. So I felt it was safe to use a model of 4 3/4 to 5%, using a 15-year or 20-year amortization schedule. The rate is lower based on the lower amortization schedule, but the options are a 15 or 20-year amortization schedule. Now, one of the things that I did a lot of research on to come to membership with the best options is, again, how do we minimize interest exposure and how can we end this loan the cheapest way possible? And the first step is we are allowed to have the ability to pay up to 20% of the outstanding principal balance without an annual penalty. So in commercial financing, in construction financing, again, the same thing. When I'm aligning the best strategies for our clients, we have to also consider prepayment penalties, exit fees, if there are balloons. So this particular program will allow membership or the club or the finance committee on an annual basis to pay up to 20% of that balance down to get to zero faster without penalty. So that can pick up some nice momentum if a majority of the club decides to finance their portion. The prepayment penalty structure is a 5-4-3-2-1 step down prepayment resetting on a 5-year history, resetting every 5 years. So I'm suggesting, I really took a hard look at these numbers, is that if it does go ultimately to a vote, is I would suggest that we set up the loan based on a 15-year amortization, because there's no shorter amortization, just because it'll keep the interest exposure the lowest. But I would suggest that membership has the option to either pay their lump sum or of a 5-year plan. My suggestion. Doesn't have to be that way. In my opinion, that if it's a 15-year or a 20-year, which I'll show those numbers, I think that can become an accounting challenge or a lot of extra work for the finance committee, because you're really, when you divide it by 15 years, 492 households, it's spreading it out a lot, in my opinion. So I want to show you that 5-year plan.
Ready?
So the suggested 5-year payoff option, $2.5 million, 492 households. That breaks down to $5,081.30 per household. So if you do not elect to pay your portion in full, we talk about financing it. But I did the math, it's about an 11+% discount per household if you pay it in full upfront, after construction. So my model here is based on if 100 members, 100 households decide we're going to pay our share, and that equates to $508,130 in full. So then my job is to convert the remaining balance to a permanent loan. That balance is $1,991,870. At an interest rate of 4 3/4, paying it off as a 5-year loan. So the key factor and key point here is the loan would close as a 15-year amortization, but we would set up the payment structure as a 5-year payoff. And that's this number. So on a 5-year payoff, it would cost $37,361.33 a month to pay this balance off in 5 years. That equates to $448,335.96 annually. Remember, a friendly reminder on the fact that you can pay up to 20% of that balance each year to get that down to zero. But the reason I'm also saying a 5-year plan here and why I stay engaged even after this closes, I'll be in touch with the finance committee of the board to take a look at it and evaluate it. Because if a lot of members have decided to do the 5-year plan, but they've got 2 years left, say, you know what, I'm good now. Let me give the rest. I'll pay the rest now. So then now the overall budget to the project, there will be a surplus because people are paying the remainder before that 5 years. So my job would then be to help evaluate that to see if it makes financial sense to pay that loan off in full before the 5 years. Because remember, there is the 5-4-3-2-1 prepayment penalty. And the way that works is year 5, if the club elects to finance it and in the first year of that, you pay it off, there's a 5% fee for that. So my point is I will make sure and help out that we don't get overzealous and pay it off too quickly where that penalty doesn't make sense. But if there's 2 years left, remember the prepayment penalty is on the basis of the remaining balance, not the original loan amount. So I don't want to get too in the weeds on that, but my point is it's my job to stay involved as a consultant here to help the club make sure the best financial decisions are made and we minimize the interest exposure giving options. That's the whole goal here, and that's the whole premise. If there is excess funds, because it was paid sooner, then that would be up, I don't think that's ever a bad thing for a budget and a board if there's excess funds. But the key thing here is we'll have a plan for that. So in breaking it down, if there's 392 members that are deciding to finance their portion, that will cost $1,143.72 annually. So these payments are due monthly, but I broke this down annually because in past experience of dealing with condo boards and associations, if you go monthly, it's just too granular. It's too much to manage. It's best to look at it on an annual basis. So naturally, if we tally that up for 5 years, it would cost $5,718.60. So that's the incentive per household, right? When you break it down by the amount of households, it's a good amount. But from a dollars and cents side of it, you can see here for my example, if you elect that you want to be in the camp of paying yours off, it's $5,081.30. If you decide to finance it, it's going to cost you a little bit more because of the interest. So it'd be $5,718.60. And just for purpose of a visual and what I was mentioning before this slide, the options there, and I'm not the one to make the decision for the club, but if the club did decide to give the 15-year option to those that would like to finance their portion, the monthly balance is less, the monthly payment is less than half than the 5-year. The monthly payment drops down to $15,493. But that would mean that we potentially would be collecting per household for 15 years. I personally think that's a little bit long, but that's certainly not my decision to make. 20 years, drops even more down to 13,000. So, excuse me, I think I inverted the numbers there. The 15-year monthly would be $15,493.40. The 20-year is $13,145.46. So significantly less, but naturally you're spreading it out over a much longer time. And a key thing to keep in mind is if a majority of the membership elects to finance and it's agreed upon of what I'm suggesting to do a 5-year option, the prepayment penalties are as favorable as humanly possible because it's based on the existing balance at that time. So I would be involved in an annual review. If there's households that paid extra, we would look at it together. We would then apply 20% if it's there to the balance each year. No penalty for that. So now our balance is going down, minimizing our exposure if the club decided to pay it off before the 5 years. So again, that's the key here. I want to make sure that I'm coming across as someone that's on the team of the club to minimize the interest exposure and make sure we have options to be able to finance this project. Next slide. So next steps, if the vote ends up working out, is the appraisal. So the appraisal is very important, but it's something that we have a lot on our side here because look around. I mean, look at this property. I mean, it's going to appraise very well. And the beauty of an appraisal of something like this in this structure, even when I'm doing residential construction loans or renovation loans, the appraisal is based on the end result. So the appraiser is going, and that's why it's so much more expensive than a regular appraisal, is because the appraiser has to review the plans, the specs, and they have to have the vision of, okay, this land is worth this today, but now when this is constructed and this is developed, this property worth that much more. And that's one of the major benefits of this, where I've often done these presentations where we need to get capital up front because there's not this amount of equity. But because there's so much equity already in this property, it's not requiring an initial capital contribution to begin. So that appraisal is an important part. Secondly, we will analyze the club's financials. This includes tax returns, bank statements, operating statements, ownership structure, and the annual budget. So that is something that I know is in good standing, of course, but we do review that. One other thing to keep in mind that can be an option, which we've done before, is if the membership elected to use reserve allocations within the current budget to maybe cover part of the closing costs or cover part of the initial interest, giving membership time to then recoup those funds. And that'll be logistically whatever the board and member, but that option is there. We will review that. Of course, we're going to review that the business plan with projections, contractor estimates, plans, timelines, projections, and specs. So my slides are definitely not as pretty as the renderings, but that'll be part of what we review. We then submit all supporting documentation to our lending partner for a letter of intent and the term sheet when that time comes. A key factor to keep in mind that I keep saying is all of these estimates are very accurate based on my experience level of doing construction financing, but they're subject to a final review and certainly subject to potential market fluctuations. This is not, this type of lending is not as volatile as, say, residential financing. It's not as closely held to the markets, but it is still something that we'd have to evaluate as it got closer. And, from a standpoint of what I do every day, and like I said, I've really enjoyed financing some of the homes just in this greater community and on the island, is I can say with confidence of just from a residential real estate side of things and watching what's gone on in the market because of COVID, because of a lot of factors, the short community obviously has become that much more of a desirable place to be and values have gone up. I can tell you with confidence, no matter how nice the home is that is going to be listed, say in this community, there'd be a picture of those renderings, or there'd be a picture if it was completed in that listing presentation with the real estate agent. That is a value add. That will be in there. So it's a value add and return on investment. I would never guarantee anything, but I review appraisals every day of the week. And for what, if we're saying it's 5,000, whatever that number ends up being per household, I can say with confidence, and I know as a lifer of the shore, we all don't really like to talk about selling our homes down here. But if you ever did sell your home, the return on that investment of having a desirable clubhouse like this, that'll be there. That'll be there. So think about it from a short-term aspect, mid-term aspect, long-term aspect. I can tell you with confidence, any home, as long as it's allowed, I would assume within the bylaws, that in a listing presentation from a real estate team, one of those pictures is going to be either the rendering or if it's constructed, that clubhouse. And I can relate to it because we're brought in often to help with developments of luxury townhome communities, luxury condo communities. We'll be doing the financing up on 35, the new development over by the front porch there. The new townhomes, we're going to be, we're involved in that financing as well. My point is that clubhouses, amenities, pools, things of that nature, they do go a long way when you talk about value of your home. So it's really everything I wanted to cover. I mean, any questions as far as the numbers? Sure.
Is the interest tax deductible to the members?
That is, that's more of a CPA question. I would think not. I would think not, but I wouldn't be comfortable answering that.
And the second question, why variable rate and not a fixed rate?
On the interest only, because it's such a short-term loan. So on the interest only portion, it's not a variable rate. That rate will stay the same during the construction. When I started the presentation was more so I used 5 1/4 for my model. The reality is if we're closing on that today, it's probably about 4 3/4. But I just don't know when the closing will be. So it's not variable during the construction. It's a moving target until we get to at least near a closing. We can lock in terms when things are established, but that rate is a little bit cushioned based on where we are today.
So you have a buffer in there?
Absolutely. Buffer for the overall calculation of interest. And same thing with the amount of how I broke it down over 10 months. It might be a little bit, I used 10 months. I felt that'd be the easiest way to show, each increment, but it will depend on how long, we typically allot 12 to 18 months for completion.
Any other questions for Mike? Yes.
Mike, I got a couple here.
Sure.
Is there a critical mass of number of members to do the 5 and 15-year plan? For example, like 490 plus, let's say you used 100.
Yes.
But let's say there's only 50 that want to do the 5-year and another group that want to do 15, another group that want to do a full payout.
We would only be offering one option. So the board would offer,
everybody would have to agree on.
It would either be upfront or 5 years, or upfront and 15 years. That's
two options.
Yeah, that's two options. Right. So I'm sorry. Yeah, I meant not a 5, a 15, and a 20. It wouldn't be like multiple financing options.
It's a great
Yeah,
question.
exactly.
It's a great question, but I'm just sharing what I've experienced in situations like this. If you spread it out for 20 years, it becomes challenging with this many households.
Well, my question is really this. What you're gonna have a vote for who's gonna pay up front and who's gonna do the 5-year.
Right.
For Mike's end, if he's only got 50 people doing the 5-year.
Right, is it interesting?
That's gonna affect his final number when he goes out to financing, right?
So, what I would suggest is it should really be more of a choice per household, not a vote on.
So, no, but he's saying to you, like, is it even interesting to your investors if there's only a $500,000 loan needed? That's where you're going, right?
It really makes no difference.
For the final interest rate.
Okay. This is all these numbers are safe to use no matter what that end breakdown is.
Okay, and maybe I missed it, but when you used the 5-year, I think you said there were certain penalties for prepaying. What did you factor in for those 5 years for prepayment penalties?
So I did not, so my goal would be for essentially to avoid any prepayment penalties, right? So the way we have to look at this is if the club elects to pay it in full, the 1% exit fee. That's simple. The prepayment penalty is a sliding scale. The longer that the loan is held on the books, the lower that percentage of that loan amount is, and it flows down. So from your question, I don't suggest, or maybe I'm understanding the question properly, but are you saying like if year 5, all the people that decided to finance just paid theirs in full? How would we handle that?
So anytime you have a loan that's a 5-year loan, sometimes you have a prepayment penalty.
Yes.
If you pay it all in year 1.
Yes.
So you pay a 3% prepayment penalty. So my question is that factored into your numbers or is that a TBD?
That's to be determined.
That answers the question.
Thanks, Mike. Of course.
All right, Mike, what banks do you normally work with?
So we are a mortgage banking institution ourselves, but we work with, from the commercial side, we work with multiple. I mean, it's a combination of banks and our company doing the funding and then transferring to the service. So it's really a multitude of banks, and from a standpoint of our disclosures and compliance, I really can't share all of those banks. Naturally, what I can do is I can certainly, when it comes time, hopefully this works out, I can disclose who the bank is at that time.
I guess my point simply is that if you use the 5-year, it probably will not be Bond Street that ends up servicing the loan. It will be some other financial institution.
Correct. So that's accurate.
And I guess it's not for you, Mike, it's for the board. I'm assuming that we don't have a capital reserve set up that would address this issue. So that's why we have to do the financing. So if we decide to move forward with this project at this point, the only option is really a financing option for this rather than tap into any type of capital reserve that may have been set aside to deal with this issue.
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? When I talked earlier today, I talked about our reserve fund. So we do have a reserve fund that we fund every year. We put in about $49,000 every year into the reserve. But that covers everything that we need, like a new truck or whatever it might be. Right, bulkheadings that we did, and the pilings in the marina. As it stands today, and it's in your packet, you've got it, right? We're a little bit less than $400,000 in our reserve. So we have $391,000 in our reserve as of today. So we certainly could leverage some of that money to offset some of the interest payments, but I mean, we would work.
If I can add to that too.
Yeah, please, yeah, here. But that's, we do have that, but not anywhere near enough to cover 2 million, right?
So we do have to be careful with that too, though, because part of the basis of the approval of the loan is the amount of reserve, because there is going to be a point that there's nothing here in between. So there is no structure. So it would have to, and I can't give that exact break until we're there, but it would be a balance of still having enough reserve to be able to finance the project, but using part of that. So I do think that based on that number, it's safe to say there could be a possibility to at least use the reserve initially to cover the servicing of the interest. We just want to be careful of how much of it we draw, because then that can make it challenging for me, because a lot of the financing is on the basis of the healthy financials that I know the club has. So it's a balance.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good question.
Any other questions for Mike?
Mike down here.
This is Mike.
Oh, okay. Sure. You want to go? You got one for Mike?
I'm just having a real problem. I think the timing is just so bad. Tom Good is in the process of reassessing our whole area. Our house is beautiful now. In my mind, my taxes are gonna go up 100%. They're already 15,000. We'll be putting for sale signs out there. So to bring something else in here, people have to pay. To me, this is not necessary. We have to pay our taxes in order to stay in our houses.
Sure.
So I just don't understand why we're discussing this now. I think the timing is so bad.
I mean, I think that, you know, if you go back to the club's history, right, I'm sure that this same discussion probably happened 70 years ago when this building was coming about. And, you know, I think I totally hear where you're coming from, and there's probably never a good time to have conversations like this. So, you know, like I said, I don't want to be part of the board that was accused of, you guys weren't ready for this issue.
We would accuse you of that, it's okay.
No, and look, it's
It's a 3-hour meeting, and maybe you haven't noticed, but a lot of people have left.
Yeah, that's,
So you're looking for a poll of people, and they've left already.
well, I don't really care if there's a poll today. I don't care if there's a poll.
I mean.
Well, no, I'd be happy to go through that scenario. People can raise their hands or not, but that's not gonna be what decides what happens today.
Right.
And for me, if I can add, you know, for why I'm here, it's just really to give a picture of what it can look like as a financial plan. And I was honored to be asked, and it's not set in stone, and that's what I just want to make sure from my standpoint. I'm just here to get help with the plan, and then let everyone, and to Bill's point, we're here to give as much information as possible to make to make a real decision based on the information, an informed decision. It's really what it comes down to.
And we're very grateful for all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Question for you, sir. A lot of the restrictions on the homes in our community are there because of the fact that the beach is somewhat limited. And it does get pretty crowded at times.
Agreed.
So that's why they did approve 2-family homes, 2-story homes, to keep the population down. Was there any thought given to incorporating maybe a pool type complex in conjunction with this new clubhouse in this area? So that when the flies are on the beach or it's super crowded, there's another alternative for the members to go somewhere else?
It was not under consideration.
Gotta redo my numbers.
But yeah, but hey, like we said, today's about having a conversation, right? There's going to be people who love it, there's going to be people who hate it, and everything in between. So, you know, I'm writing the suggestion down, and we have discussion.
So there was
not.
28 minutes before the donut place closes.
I'm going
The pictures that I saw, the structure was gorgeous and everything. Whatever decision I make on this, it won't be based on the money, but I'm just curious, would you see this being available to rent in July and August? Clubs?
We've never done that in the past.
Well, we actually used to rent
Did we?
it, but
During the week only?
there was such a conflict between our activities, because we got so involved in
Right.
having our almost daily activities, and parking was such a problem, so that's why the board, I don't know, how many years ago, before I was on it, did away with renting it during the summer months.
Yeah, I think it's just a difficulty with the parking, and people have external guests, but, you know, again, you know,
Right now, I
we
think we probably wouldn't be renting it in the peak of the summer.
correct.
You don't want to rent it during.
Yes.
So if we do go, the value of the clubhouse would be more, we would be assessed with a much bigger tax bill also, right?
No,
we don't
pay tax.
We don't pay tax.
We're not- so we're not taxes.
I got a question. I mean, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, like you said, we've been reassessing. So now our taxes go up. let's say we all vote on it, and 75% say, yeah, that's a good, I like it, it's a good idea. And say 25% say, I'm too old for it. I'm in my 80s, I'm in my 90s. I mean, it ain't gonna benefit me. I don't have, my grandkids don't even come here. So how do you get everybody to pay up their share of this loan?
We actually don't need, I mean, by being part of this organization, you have agreed to pay dues and to do things that were voted upon by the community that we live in. So I guess people could renege or not pay, and we put into collections or whatever else the normal process would be.
Well, okay, that's my second question.
Yes.
Now you say you gotta pay, it's in the bylaws. You know what? I'm selling my house, they're selling their house. They're not a new owner state.
If you're on the bay, I'll buy it.
I
wasn't there.
So now I'm saying, the new owners are saying, I want to get into all this,
Then they can't move into the community. I mean,
Oh,
Part of the obligation, honestly, I don't need to be flippant, it's really the answer is that you can't not join the club if you buy a home here. So that's really the answer. Fortunately or unfortunately.
Can I just make a comment? And to me, it doesn't matter how everybody's gonna vote. But I will tell you, as being a real estate agent, this is the most desirable community on the Barrier Island because of the amenities that are in this community. Now, everybody knows when you do purchase a home here, if it's $750, you have no choice to opt out. So everyone looking at homes here knows. So if now you change this clubhouse and it is that, or whatever it's going to be, maybe by then, 2 years from now, it'll be higher because those are fees that you don't have an option. So when you say, we're gonna all sell our houses, woohoo, taxes are taxes. We have this conflict with Lavalette versus Tom's River Township. I just want you to know that, it was said around the room, this is one of the most desirable communities, which is why you've seen your neighbors' houses come and go in less than 24 hours. The prices have changed. It's good for everyone because these are your new comps. He's a mortgage guy. He can tell you these aren't figures that people are creating in their heads. These houses are moving and people, I have a list of people just wanting Ocean Beach too. So keep that in mind. It's not going to affect me if we rebuild the clubhouse or we don't, but just keep it in mind. This is really something that is a hidden gem that people want and specifically want. I do have people who only want to look in this community. So for those of you considering selling, your house will go. It really will because of where we are. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. She said we hope we don't.
No, we don't want anybody to go. Well, I don't know about that.
But if you're selling, here's how these cards.
I'm going to bring about 500 cards. No. Now listen, I've been here myself since 1988. So listen, I love it. It's a great place. We just talk, things come up, and we have to present it to you. That is part of our duty. So don't feel like we did it at a bad time. There's never a good time. And yes, are the taxes going to go up? Probably, but then we all do appeals like we all did. I think I did too since I lived here. So just keep it in mind.
As was pointed out, we're over 3 hours right now. But
I've enjoyed every minute. Thank you.
It was long, but we wanted everybody to have the chance to ask questions. We didn't want anybody to feel that they weren't recognized or, and that you had all the information. Now, we're not voting. We can poll as not get requested, which will be completely an unscientific thing. But if people wanted to do it, we can do it if you feel you want to. But as I said, the boards will be in about a week, Bill.
Yeah.
Boards that will have the renderings on it. The information will be online, all the information. So anyone who wasn't here today or there's a lot to take in today, you have all summer to look at this, and then we can do an official vote. We're saying in our full membership.
Yep.
Right. Full membership meeting. So